All right, and welcome back. It's now time for Political Point. And what we'd like to look at today is the position of Deputy Governor, also known as DG. And the question that we're asking this morning is whether that's a position that should be scrapped. According to Punguza Mzigo, which is a constitutional review proposal that has been given by Third Way Alliance through Ekuru Court, well, one of the proposals is to actually scrap that position. And maybe just as a challenge, as you think about it, let me just ask you, how many deputy governors do you know? You probably know a number of governors, but if I asked you, how many deputy governors do you actually know? That might be a challenge. I tried that on my own, and it was a bit of a challenge. But just to refer to some of the answers that you've given so far in regards to that question, before we hand over to Trix to give us just a few statistics, the question is, do you think that the position of deputy governor should be scrapped? Now, what are you saying? We have Hillary, who says they are absolutely bogus. It's like having an assistant house girl without enough resources in your house. Wow, what an analogy right there. Gitonga Ndambuki says that even the seat of deputy president should be scrapped. Okay. We have more comments coming through. Suleiman Thoya says that for me, these so-called deputies should find something else to do. They just consume taxpayers' money. I'll read one more before handing over to Trix to take us through some of the facts and figures. John Mwaniki says, absolutely, it should be scrapped. Their role is completely undefined up to date. Well, we do have a very able panel where we're going to have this discussion this morning on the position of Deputy Governor. Meanwhile, let's have your comments coming through. I'll read them as we go along. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Trix. Trix, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Now, while we are asking you that particular question, as you get your answers ready and giving us your opinion, the question is, should that position be scrapped? We obviously have to defer to the Constitution to figure out what, how they would come into office, what their value is to the county government. And of course, we do know what they do in our respective counties, but there are some set indicators of how they can come into play in more important positions, are of course being at, as some of you have written, at the whims of their governors. Now, on Chapter 11 of Article 182 of the Constitution, the office of the county governor shall become vacant if the holder of the office, that is the governor, for example, the first option is if they die. That, of course, in many instances is inevitable. It happens. You cannot plan for that. And of course, this is when the DP becomes more activated or resigns in writing, addressed to the Speaker of the County Assembly. Let's move on to the other side and see other instances. If the county governor ceases to be eligible to be elected, county governor and ceases to be elected county governor under Article 180, Chapter 2, then we have is convicted of an offence punishable by imprisonment for at least 12 months or more. Now let's look to the other slide and see what other instances that position can be termed vacant. If the county governor is convicted of an offence punishable by imprisonment for at least 12 months, that we already said, and is removed from office under this constitution. Now, we have seen certain cases that some of our county governors, many, related to graft, have been told to stay away from office because as they undergo investigation. And in these instances, we see the deputy governor coming in and taking over matters of governance and administration. But in certain cases, such as the Nairobi County, we find that there is no DP. So in such an instance, let's say if, God forbid, the governor passes on, or let's say they're asked or directed by the courts to stay away from office, what happens then? Because that is a vacuum that has not yet been provided for. Now, if a vacancy occurs in the office of the county governor, this is according to the Constitution, the DG rather, shall assume office for the remainder of the term of the county government. But as I had said earlier on, it becomes a bit of a conundrum where there is no deputy governor. And so what happens if the vacancy occurs in the office of the county government and that of the deputy county government or the deputy governor is unable to act? The Speaker of the county assembly is set to act as governor. But then you find in an instance such as the Nairobi county government, there is also a bit of a conundrum. We have two, one acting speaker while the other was reinstated by the courts. So it's also still a bit of a challenge to figure out, in the case of Nairobi county government, what's going to happen in case of these provisions that are given by the Constitution are not sufficient to actually deal with the situation on the ground. Back to you, Michael.
Right, thank you very much, Trix, on that very able, sort of definition of who the deputy governor is and what the Constitution says regarding that particular office. A quick reintroduction of the guests that we have this morning on the panel to help us have this discussion. We are joined by Maria Mbeneka, who is a lawyer, also an LSK council member. Thank you for joining us. We also have Kevin Osido, Director, County Governance Watch, and last but not least, we have Steve Ogola, who is a lawyer. So allow me to start with you, Steve, by first of all just fully understanding the position of deputy governor as understood or as given in the Constitution, what their role is.
The more prominent role is continuity, stability in the county, in the absence of the governor. And we must be careful to preserve that. That's one of the unique innovations within our Constitution. During the term of the governor, it is possible that the deputy governor can go unnoticed, because the Constitution has not allocated or assigned the office of the deputy governor specific functions away from those of the governor. He performs functions as may have been assigned, as may be assigned to him by the governor, just like a deputy president is the principal assistant to the president. But as you've seen in Bomet, look at the political disruption and even the disruption in terms of governance in case of sudden death of a governor. We should be glad that we have a deputy governor within our design of the Constitution that can carry on the work so that there is no unnecessary election within a space of 5 years. So we can't lose that. But outside the possibility of continuity and stability in the county, we must concede that the deputy governor have no any other prominent role. That is just the short answer.
That's a short answer. All right, Kevin Osido, you one who traverses counties and looks at how they work in terms of operations, day-to-day operations. Do you find the position of deputy governor possibly one that needs to either be given more roles, or is it one that maybe as it is working from your experience?
Mike, in the 47 counties, there are counties where the DG, the space of the deputy governor is seen to be working. But there are counties where, in fact, like you asked our viewers and ourselves, how many deputy governors do you know? And so to expressively respond to your question, we need to really have a second look at the space of the deputy governors. Because if you were to look at our Constitution, Article 179(4), refers to the governor and the deputy as chief executive officers, and therefore the deputy governor becomes a deputy chief executive officer. And many times I have asked myself, if really, what is the role of a CEO? What is the role of a chief executive officer? And what is the presumptive understanding of what that kind of role is supposed to be? So then it goes back to where we derived our text of the Constitution from. Why did we want to consider the governor as a chief executive officer? It really means, therefore, that there are specific roles then that the governor is supposed to have, and that the role of a chief executive officer, then there probably is that kind of ideal situation that you wanted to have. For example, in a company, what really would be the role of a deputy chief executive officer? And so I think that, yes, there are counties where deputy governors are working as principal assistants to their governors, and there are counties where, in fact, there are one or two counties where deputy governors don't even exist in those particular counties.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Nairobi is an example, and we've also got the likes of West Pokot, where apparently the deputy governor has been out of the country for a very long time. Let me come to you, Maria, on the question of that role of the deputy governor or deputy CEO in a corporate setup. I think it is very clear what the deputy CEO is there for, but in this particular setup, it looks like it's not that clear. And also, we must remember that this is a political position, such that the governor, should they disagree with the deputy governor, has very express powers to ensure that they ignore the deputy governor, and that becomes a risk. The continuity part of it, of course, is a very, very good thing that the crafters of the Constitution put in place by virtue of the fact we do not have to go into another election in case of death. But should that role of deputy governor be better defined and given more roles, do you think?
I think the point that you're making is that management in any organization is very important. And this being a political office to begin with, that is the election of the governor, and the way they come into office, we often tend to look at it from the political angle. But the truth of the matter is that this is a management role that requires serious management skills and understanding of the job. Because if you look at the job of the governor, apart from just the governance itself, there's engagement with the county assembly, there's the direct engagement with the Mwananchi. You have to think about development. There are so many things. There are meetings that governors attend. There's the Council of Governors. Even the deputy governors have their own organization. So there's a whole management structure there that has to be taken into consideration. And that is why, even when you look at what is contemplated in Article 180 of the Constitution, which says that, the deputy governor is nominated by the governor. Once the governor is declared as elected, then the deputy governor who has been nominated by the governor as the DG is then declared, as having been validly put in office. So that whoever is picking a deputy governor must think about the management style that they want to adopt. So if from the onset your management style is to ignore governance procedures or best practice, then that's what will happen, no matter who your deputy governor is. And you've seen those instances. Absolutely.
All right, Kevin, there's also the question of the ruling that was given by Justice Mumbi Ngugi, and if this was to be followed to the letter, and this continuity that you talked about, we've seen it come into play in where there's death. But there's also continuity that is required should a governor be unable to operate for whatever reason. For example, we have the likes of Kiambu County, where we've had the governor asked not to get close to the office. And that, first of all, help us understand, does that mean that they still cannot operate? I remember Governor Waitito saying that him being told not to go to office does not mean he cannot continue with operations of, what he needs to do as a governor.
Now, whether a governor who has been charged with corruption-related offenses can continue performing his functions while he has been asked to stay away from office is still an ongoing political and legal debate. Now, the answer is both yes and no, and I lean towards no. But let's deal with the yes first. Yes, because you've been told, do not stay away from your office. So maybe at a minimum level, since you have not been removed from office, you could still coordinate some functions. But no, which is my preferred position, is once you have been indicted of a corruption-related offense, you have been charged with a corruption-related offense, you bring into doubt your integrity, honesty, probity, and the kind of ideals that Article 73 requires of the office of the governor, because you hold that position in public trust. And I've said before, public trust is breached or significantly lowered once you are charged with theft. I mean, we really can't overemphasize that. It's even a question for debate. It's a common sense issue. Now, if you look at Justice Mumbi Ngugi's ruling in its connotative expanse, it means stay away from office could as well mean you're prohibited from undertaking the functions of that office. For instance, you cannot fire, you cannot hire new CCs, you cannot even appoint a new deputy governor. Like in the case of Nairobi, Governor Sonko may not, in fact, have the legal capacity, if we are to understand Justice Mumbi Ngugi's judgment in its connotative expanse, in the broadest expanse possible, he may not have the legal power to appoint a deputy during the pendency of his case. That there's a high chance that the court will find that he can't do that.
Is that a legal position or one that is left to an individual based on their conscience?
Now, you see, legal positions can also match individual personal convictions. But since it's going to be a hotly contested issue, there will be need, perhaps in the future, for a judicial interpretation. Whether a governor once charged, like in the case of Sonko, can then continue to perform functions. When you have been told, stay away from office, what does it mean? Does it mean stay away from the physical address or stay away from the functional mandate of that office? And I'm saying that in the broader connotative expanse or in a more purposive reading of the Constitution, staying away from office means that you can no longer perform the functions that a governor is required to perform. That is why you have the office of the deputy governor. In fact, Justice Mumbi herself indicated that, listen, there's not going to be a crisis because you have deputy governors. And now, I think the distinction that has not been captured is this. There's a difference between staying away and removal. The court does not have the political mandate to remove a governor. The court can only indicate that, barring any circumstances, if what I see before me here, pending determination of the triability of these issues, this governor should stay away from office to preserve the integrity of that office. What is lacking is follow-up measures. Like in the case of governors, if you look at Section 33 of the County Governors Act, there's a procedure there for impeachment. One of the grounds for impeachment includes gross misconduct and belief. Belief is written there. Belief that the governor has violated the law. Just a belief.
Just a belief.
It's a very low threshold. In short, MCAs, the assembly in Kiambu, should have impeached Governor Waititu, and then the matter be taken to the Senate. And if he wanted to challenge that, then the matter referred back to court.
Okay. Maria, let me get your understanding of Justice Mumbi Ngugi's ruling of staying away from office. And of course, that may reflect on other governors, again, based on whether they're going to be charged. Does it mean staying away from a physical address, or does it mean staying away from the function?
There are two things. One, if you look at the Mumbi Ngugi judgment, what she was actually, the case that was before her, was dealing with the governor of Samburu, I believe. And the issue was whether or not he could access his office.
Correct.
And the judgment that she gave was, surrounding that whether or not he should be able to access the office. And the decision that she arrived at was that he would have to be accompanied by officers from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Now, when you look at, so that is the plain reading of the judgment. And of course, she went on to give her reasoning as to whether or not a governor should be able to access the office. How it has been interpreted is,
a different thing altogether.
But then when you look at the Constitution and Article 182, 5 instances when a county governor can be removed from office, whether it's death, eligibility, whether you're no longer eligible to have been elected as a governor. It can be because of removal under the Constitution, as Steve has envisaged, which is impeachment, and it can also be because you have been convicted, not charged.
Not charged.
So, so the court can give an indication, but you must follow the Constitution when it comes to the removal of an office bearer such as the governor. So in this instance, that is my understanding of the matter.
So in your understanding, does that mean, for instance, if we use case in point,
Yes.
somebody like Waititu should stay away from the office? Does that mean that he cannot function and the deputy governor takes over? And I think Kiambu is an example, because we even had James Nyoro, the deputy governor, coming in to say that from now, there's going to be no vacuum, I am taking over. But of course, politically speaking, there was a bit of contention.
Yes, there's a contention because remember, the governor has been charged, okay?
Not convicted.
Not convicted. The matter is still in court. And when we interpret Mumbi Ngugi's judgment, if we are to look at it in the context of the governor of Samburu, there are conditions under which he can still access the office. Okay.
So he can still function. He can still do the functions of a governor.
He can.
Okay. Kevin, your thoughts on this, and again, reflecting on Chapter 6 of the Constitution, leadership and integrity.
From what I have seen happening, in county governments. Let's be honest, let's be fair to our viewers and to Kenyans who expect services to be delivered. The County Governments Act refers to the office of the governor as a public service center. And it goes further to say what that really means. And so from what I have seen happening in counties, it would not be fair that a governor who has been, who is facing legal battles and of course who has been, a governor who is in court to be seen around the office. Because on a normal day, you walk into a governor's office, you will see the massive number of people waiting to see Mheshimiwa. And if you are lucky to spend in that county and maybe have dinner or have breakfast at the governor's office, you will see the number of citizens who wake up at 6 o'clock to want to go and see their governor. And that really depends on the personality of the person and how you've structured yourself. That's one. Number two, let's look at how we elect our governors. These people are not, it's not a board that sits and then decides like in a company, how you come up with a chief executive officer. It's a political process. And both the governor and the deputy governor are elected politically. So you expect that even from what we see happening, there are other political games that go on even surrounding all these cases, which in my view, Michael, will affect the manner in which the case is going and indeed service delivery at the county level. It would be fair, therefore, to, in my view, suggest that if a governor is facing legal challenges, please step aside. And I think among several other instruments that govern our governance, for example, the Mwongozo for public servants, it also shows you whether you will earn half a salary, quarter salary, or an eighth salary, depending on the issues that you are going through. On chapter 6, which is the fourth issue, it goes there. Actually, the first point is gross misconduct. And in chapter 6, it has explained what gross misconduct is. And I don't think there is nothing as gross a misconduct as running away with hundreds of millions of shillings that are supposed to be meant for service delivery for citizens. Please step aside and allow investigations
sorry to interrupt you, because
investigations to go on.
That may be true, but you see that, like Maria mentioned, there is accusation and there is conviction. Once convicted, then it's very clear what happens.
And that's why I said, whether a governor who has been charged with corruption-related offenses may continue in office, serving in office, will be an ongoing political and legal debate, and maybe ultimately settled through a judicial determination. But look at Article 181 of the Constitution, removal of county governors. Article 181, sub-article 181B. What does the law say? It says, a county governor may be removed from office on any of the following reasons, including B, where there are serious reasons for believing that the county governor has committed a crime under national or international law. Let's just pause there. Believing, it's a matter of conviction. It's a matter of persuasion. That is a tool for political accountability. Now, contradistinguish that political accountability with Article 182, where a conviction has been attained. Now, that is criminal culpability. What we are saying is this: as sure as the Constitution is our supreme law, if you are convicted of a criminal offense, and I agree with Maria, you'll be removed. But that is not all. In terms of political accountability, the Constitution anticipates, and I've read it here, a scenario where the county assembly, looking at the evidence being tendered in court, may make a political decision whether they want this governor to continue serving. You know, he can be impeached, but not found to be guilty. That will not bring him back, because impeachment is a political process, including even gross misconduct. Gross misconduct can mean the governor is using false language against women, against residents, or his conduct is not honorable. Look at the incidents in which the former Deputy Chief Justice, Baraza did. She pinched the ears of some security official. You know, what in ordinary life would be considered as a minor infraction that can be forgiven. It cost her job. There is the philosophy of accountability. In terms of governance, they talk about political accountability. For judicial officers, they talk about personal accountability. You know, it could have been well that if she was prosecuted for that offense, DCJ Baraza may not have been convicted, but she was removed. Okay, she resigned before she was removed. Here, the challenge is this. I think governors, and I appeal to them, governors must consider what is it that they really care for. Let us not over-rely on the law to force you out or to preserve your space. Nobody's, you know, when you elect a governor, he has the political mandate. There's the presumption that he will serve for 5 terms. So we don't want disruption in the counties. Nobody wants that. But if you're being accused of mismanagement of public funds, where is the place of moral conviction as a leader? Personal accountability as a leader. You can easily say, I'm going to step aside. And we must hail Sonko for that. You know, he said, even at the level of indication, he said, if I'm charged in court, I will appoint a deputy and I will step aside. I've just alluded the challenges of appointing a deputy after he has been charged, but that statement itself reflects a positive commitment to the Constitution.
To the Constitution.
And that is what governors must reflect on.
Okay, and politicians, we know, will say things sometimes which sound good, but practically may not be possible. And let's take Nairobi County now that that's where we are. And coming to you, Maria, the procedure of Sonko naming a deputy governor, should he step aside, has already got challenges. But we also have another challenge there because we have 2 speakers, so to speak, in Nairobi County. We have Beatrice Elachi, who initially was impeached, but the court ruled that she should continue. And we also have Mwaura, who is currently sitting in as speaker. Yet, in the Constitution, it is viewed, should there be a problem, the Speaker is the one who will take over and, you know, will go through the vetting of the Deputy Governor. Where does that leave Nairobi County? Should even Sonko say that I am naming so-and-so? We already have 2 speakers now. Who operates?
Well, legally, and because we are lawyers, we must say that, first of all, there is the Speaker of Nairobi, and that is Beatrice Elachi. She was removed through a process of the County Assembly, went to court, and was excuse me, was put back in office by the court. So legally, she is the speaker. Now, Mwaura is the acting speaker. So technically, we can't say we have 2 speakers. We have the speaker, and that is Beatrice Elachi. Now, the issues of whether or not she can access the office is a story for another day. But if push comes down to shove, there is a speaker substantively in office. And therefore, what is contemplated by the Constitution, and this is the thing that people need to remember, that our Constitution is a well-thought-out document that envisaged such scenarios. So that even at the end of the day, supposing you had even those 2 scenarios you're talking about, there's a recourse at the end of the day. What happened in Makueni when the County Assembly did not agree with the governor? Yeah, the national government stepped in.
Right.
And this can happen. You saw the other day, I think Governor Samboja also triggered the same recourse. So what we need to remember is that there is a process and there is a remedy. Whether or not we want to follow the process is the issue.
It's a different question altogether.
Yes, and there is also, you must look at the law and politics. What happens when they collide? One must give way. One must give way.
Yes. All right, Kevin, and that's where now you come in, when the law and politics come in, because these are political seats. These are elected members, and as a result, they also throw a spanner into the works, so to speak. If it was a corporate setup, it's normally easier to deal with that because there is a board who would decide, and that is done. But now we're talking about elective seats. Now, when politics and the law collide, what happens? And over all that, the overarching question that we want to find out, is the position of deputy governor relevant moving forward?
Mike, that position is relevant in my view, from what I've seen happening in county governments. And as Maria rightfully said, you see, a governor wakes up and is gobbled with so many things taking place. But again, remember that leadership starts and ends everything starts and ends with leadership. What kind of governor are you? Are you an accommodative governor who wants to be seen to be delegating responsibilities by constitution to your deputy governor? How do you work with your CCs, the Baraza la Mawaziri at the county level, the county executive committee members? How do you engage with county assembly? How do you engage with the speaker of the county assembly? And one of the things that I think we need to also bring up, especially when it comes to politics and the law, is a position of the Council of Governors that also, in fact, has a whip, Mheshimiwa Kivutha Kibwana, who is supposed to be whipping governors and conducting his roles and responsibilities as exposed and given to him by, the governors themselves. So to say is that, of course, they might not have a lot to do and say because this is a political process, and it's the people of Nairobi who know why they voted for Mheshimiwa Sonko. Other governors were probably not part and parcel of it. But now you've been admitted to the club of the membership of the Council of Governors, and you are a member by virtue of certain set statutes and precedent, and of course a way in which governors are expected to be acting and behaving once you are a member. So what is therefore their voice with regards to when it comes to the gaps that we have seen at the council, at the county government of Nairobi? That's one. Two, it also needs to be noticed by governors that actions of one governor really affect almost all of them, because this is a precedent that you are setting, that one governor will behave like this, and that is what other courts and other jurisdictions will continue to quote, because it's a precedent that has been set. So then how do you behave when it comes to that level? And then the last thing is your personal motive as a leader. What exactly do you want to do? What kind of legacy do you want to leave for your people? I like what Sonko, why the people of Nairobi voted for Sonko, because they thought, actually, this is a person who is going to respond to most of our needs. 3 years into devolution, his first term, what is the report card? What is the indices that what is the index that we can give to Governor Sonko? It therefore goes back to respond to the question, is politics and law, can there be a convergence? In my view, I think everything that works within a county government has been set on the constitution. But again, remember, Mike, that this constitution is not practiced in a vacuum. It has 6 other supportive legislations, Urban Areas and Cities Act. Nairobi is a city. It really shows how the governor is supposed to interact and intermingle with the people, by that particular legislation.
Okay.
County Governments Act, Public Finance Management Act of 2012, when it comes to issues of resources, the law, Public Finance Management Act, will show you what the Constitution is saying in a much more broadened version. So I think even as we talk about the politics and the law, the moment you've been sworn in as a governor, please, there is that particular charter that you have with your citizens. Behave in a manner as to meet the expectations of your people, which some governors, in my view, have really tried.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in some areas, now like Nairobi, why don't we have a deputy governor?
All right, Maria, let me come to you. I'll come to you, Kevin, in just a bit. Maria, but to get your point, I know you're a lawyer.
Yes.
And you'd probably lean on the Constitution heavily to do that. But given that deputy governor is what we're discussing today, and it's a political position, do you find it to some extent irrelevant? I know there is a continuity bit that Kevin, Steve ably defended and said, in a case where, for instance, death continuity is a good thing, such that we don't have to go into another election. But should that be restructured to make that position more defined and more relevant?
One, I don't think it's irrelevant. I think it's a very important position because of the nature of the governance and the political style of any county. Now, if you look at like I said before, the roles and the responsibilities of the county governor, you, of necessity, cannot do everything.
Right.
And you also have a county executive committee that you're running. You have various departments that you're running. You have development projects. You're pushing legislation in the county assembly. You're called to account. And at each turn, you need to be able to do so in a clean manner. Now, anyone who will tell you that an organization that is successfully run is one that is successfully organized. And remember, the governor is the one who nominates. This person is not thrust upon you. You're the one who chooses who you can work with. So it is a position that was well thought out, in my view. It is one that works on the ground if you have a good working style. But in some instances, of course, you find because of political interests, you have to pick a county, you have to pick a deputy that is acceptable across the political divide. But you must also find the magic to ensure that you're able to deliver together, because you cannot have a situation, it has never happened smoothly, where you have a county governor who is completely ignoring the deputy governor. That has its consequences.
It has its consequences.
Yes.
All right, Steve.
Let me just say something to deepen what Maria was saying about Chege Mwaura's election, purported election as the Speaker, Nairobi County Assembly. I think, and I hail her for being too kind and charitable. Chege Mwaura is a usurper, and the MCAs are co-conspirators in an evil scheme to undermine the Constitution. Here's the thing. There's a difference between vacancy in the office of the Speaker and absence. If you look at Article 178 of the Constitution, it says that if the Speaker is absent from the chambers, members may elect one of their own to act. Absence is not vacancy. If you look at Section 11 of the County Governments Act, it talks about vacancy arising out of removal. The procedure for removal is documented in the law and was already impugned by the court, because it requires first that there has to be a notice of intention to table a motion requiring a resolution to remove the Speaker. That notice ought to be supported by at least 1/3 of the Assembly, members of the Assembly. Number two, the Speaker must be given an opportunity to respond to those allegations before that notice, before that motion has been debated and a resolution passed. Number three, members must pass that resolution by at least 3/4 of the House membership. Now, when the court reviewed the purported removal of Beatrice Elachi, it said the second step out of the 3 steps of a notice supported by a third, an opportunity to respond to those allegations, and then a vote. The court found that Elachi was not given an opportunity
to respond.
And therefore said the removal was illegal. It's as if it never happened. And the consequential issues that go back to the office. If the MCAs wanted to remove her, they could find another ground and then remove her procedurally. Now, what they did, they stopped her from accessing the office. So Elachi is in office substantively. She is in that office constructively in the chambers, although they don't see her, but legally she sits there. You know, you can't prevent someone from accessing the office, then you elect a temporary speaker. And again, temporary speaker cannot act for so long. You get, you're temporary, either the speaker has traveled or is away because she's unwell, and then you hold fort for her. So what is happening now in the County Assembly of Nairobi, and I agree with her fully, there's only one speaker in law, but the political manipulation of the Constitution at the Assembly is something that we must call out. MCAs must know, and I plead with the President. You know, ultimately, Nairobi County Assembly is a Jubilee Assembly by all intents and purposes. The party leader can intervene, and who is the Jubilee party leader? It's the President. The party leader should intervene in this matter. Advise the County Assembly to allow Beatrice Elachi to continue performing her functions as by law established.
Okay.
In fact, these MCs have conceded. You know, the fact that you're electing a temporary speaker itself speaks to the recognition of a substantive office holder.
Absolutely.
If the office holder is not there, then you elect a new speaker, and Beatrice Elachi is effectively removed. They have not done that.
They've not done that.
So
all right.
we're
out of time. We only have 3 minutes. So I want to each give you a minute for your closing remarks. I'll start with you, Kevin. Very briefly, a minute, please.
There's a reason why you are a speaker. There's a reason why you are an MCA. There's a reason why you are a governor. There's a reason why you are a deputy governor. Let's understand why that reason is. And once we have the reason, I think the onus is to deliver the services that the citizens expect, and that those who have the wherewithal to provide the environment to make it conducive for people to work, please go ahead and provide that environment.
All right, Maria?
The makers of the Constitution, who are the people of Kenya, were wise enough to install checks and balances at every turn. We have numerous laws that speak to the conduct and behavior of public officers, state officers. We have accountability questions that must be adhered to. Now, the entire political landscape, or whatever landscape that you're operating in, is governed by the law. And we must adhere to the truth and what is held by the Constitution, so that when we have processes that must be followed, we really must follow them. Like in the case of in Nairobi, what is happening is that the county assembly is actually in contempt of the law, because you have an order installing a speaker back into office and then you choose to ignore it. So you cannot pick and choose what works for you. If the process is that you're required to go through impeachment, follow the procedure. If the process is that you're required to step aside, then what is the process of stepping aside or being removed from office? For me, I think we must be true to the law and we must follow the procedure, not when it suits us, but at all times.
At all times.
Yeah.
Steve, your closing remarks.
In terms of vigilance, whenever there is a crisis in governance, be it at the national or county government, the first issue to be interrogated is the contribution of those office holders in the creation of that crisis. Because assessing the problems we have within the counties and at the national level, there is an emerging culture of office holders undermining the functional integrity of those offices, not complying with the Constitution and the rules, and instead submitting to political persuasion. That is part of the problem. I don't want Kenyans to rush to debate how other institutions or how other people are interfering with those offices while ignoring the real cause of the problems, which could very much be the office holders, be it Nairobi County Assembly, be it the office of the governor, be it the national government. That is always the problem.
All right, thank you very much. Steve Ogolla, who is a lawyer, and Maria Mbeneka, a lawyer as well, and Kevin Osida, Director, County Governance Watch, for joining us this morning on Political Point. We still continue with that debate and would like to hear what your take is on whether the office of Deputy Governor is relevant as far as you're concerned moving forward, and whether that's one that should be scrapped. I think it's very clear what the position is as enshrined and viewed in the Constitution. So we continue that debate online. But for now, we're going to take a short break. But do stay with us. We have more lined up for you right here on Morning Express.